Ladies and gentlemen, doing a little solo podcast today just because I don't know, sometimes it's easier than trying to wrangle people, even though there's probably like a dozen people that I could call up. But the week's getting partway over and whatever. And I think what I'm gonna do is do not only a sort of shorter solo podcast every once in a while that's less based around necessarily interacting with someone, even though Chris is probably going to be a regular co-host more often. Originally he came on as a guest, and then later we set it up so that he was a guest largely when all the fun, dare I say, fun 20 years ago Joe Rogan type topics of aliens and Bigfoot and poop and whatever came up, because he's just the best person I know to help me get through all that. He might be the best person that there actually is. But yeah, we kind of stacked a few. Like, we did a couple episodes in one day a little while ago, so not gonna bug him too much. And there's a couple other people that I should have join. But anyway, I don't want to pigeonhole my solo podcast as one particular angle, but I almost kind of feel like they should be Reverend John's singularity update, because I don't know, it's a thing that I can rant about without necessarily having someone else with me, and it's like not that funny by itself, if that makes any sense. Like, it would, the episodes that centered around something like that would be me sort of wasting whoever's next to me's time. Certainly not yours, of course. This is worth listening to, but I'm just for me to bulldoze over them with all this stuff that this is one of the rare ones where I kind of wrote down notes. I mean, I probably won't look at them, but I just wanted to, think about what I want to talk about a little. So I guess a few things have sort of happened in the AI front recently, and let us not forget that I think it's been close to a year since I sort of publicly said that in 3 years we will end up with AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, which is basically like, the machine can completely think on its own, and at the same time that will just sort of turn the world upside down. And I didn't so publicly, but when Midjourney, which I love to use, as we all know, first came out, I kind of was like, in 4 years, and I've just been updating it. So it's like, I think in 2 years. And the wild thing is like that was kind of a crazy, I'm just throwing it out there, but just from what I'm seeing and hearing, I'm suspicious of it, and everyone's like, And now that I would say I would probably mark us at around 2 years before stuff starts getting like really crazy weird. People have been freaking out all around me. People have been freaking out online. I mean, not like, obviously not rioting in the streets, but regular people are screaming about it on Facebook. They still don't understand it, by the way. That's the really interesting thing. There is a prevailing sentiment out there, and not just among the artist community, but I'm going to talk about that for a second, or in a second, probably for longer than a second. But when the image generation stuff was first coming out, people were like, "Oh, it's not making anything original." It's like you go like, "I want a dinosaur riding a tricycle." It just finds a picture of a tricycle and a dinosaur and it mashes them together. It absolutely does not and has never worked like that. Now, it knows what dinosaurs look like and what something riding a bicycle looks like, and what bicycles look like, because it's seen pictures and drawings and images of bicycles and dinosaurs and people riding bicycles and whatever. The thing that's impressive about it is that it's extrapolating from what it's seen something that is technically new. Now, people are like, well, yeah, sometimes the copyright thing is, down in the watermarks end up in the training data or whatever. So it's just stealing those pictures. Like, no, it's not. It just sees them all over everything on the internet and starts to assume that's part of what a picture of a bicycle is, that it has this little thing in the corner that either says the Huffy or whatever, stickman.com, or I don't know, one of those dumb. Is it stickman.com? Where do stock photos come from? iPhoto, stock, I don't know. Whatever. And you'll notice that it never recreates them it's just a thing that you could recognize as a stock photo-y watermark, but it wasn't one in particular because, again, it wasn't just lifting a specific picture. It was just seeing that all over the place. Now, again, as it's a very complicated, machine learning type of thing, it's kind of been corrected now. So they're like, oh, when you see this, that's not all that important. Like, this is just a thing. And it understands that because now it never happens anymore. If you're using one of the nicer ones, that you're like paying for or something, you don't get that. It actually didn't even really happen for very long, but everybody jumped on it as this thing to kind of rally around and be like, it's stealing art. And I kind of got into it with someone on the face, but I try not to react to much on the social medias, but I sometimes when something is like very near and dear to my heart and I know it's an actual person from around town or whatever, and not just a rage-baiting troll farm, whatever, you really just shouldn't engage with anybody at all. There'd be no, there should really just be no talking. The kindergarten nap time rules might be the best rules. But nevertheless, this person seemed like they were hitting the nail on the head a little bit because they were like, oh, like AI isn't really bad. It's capitalism that combined with it that sort of makes it dangerous, and that got me thinking. And what that means is people's jobs are going to disappear because of artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, and whatever. And but at an extreme rate. Obviously, horse and buggy makers went out of business. All of that shit. And I will say. Let's see. I don't want to be too all over the road here. I'll stick to this topic. But okay, so they were like, yeah, that's the problem. It's like instead of everybody losing their job all at once, and so we just have to completely rearrange how things work. It's just going to be like one profession at a time disappears, and everyone else goes, ha, like you have to move from your house into a tent now because you just can't get a job doing anything other than driving for UPS or whatever. And then it comes for the next people and the next people, and it just goes like, yeah, well, you have to have a job. We don't know what to tell you. And when it hits a certain amount of people unemployed, it's like, well, now we're going to have a real mess on our hands. Anyway, I kind of made a comment on there about, I saw a bunch of other people commenting, and they were going, it's like the thing the original poster was saying was about how, the enemy is kind of the people at the top who are going to just use this and they're going to keep playing Monopoly even as all the pieces fall off the board, rather than going like, oh, we see where this is going, we have to rearrange things now. And a lot of people are like, what the worst thing is? It's the plagiarism. Again, because they don't get... The worst thing about AI facilitating absolute final stage capitalism where, if you thought things got bad during early COVID, it's like the grid had a sniffle and suddenly there was no gas or toilet paper and everything was just insane. It's like, can you imagine if the unemployment rate's like 50%? Like, it's like, it won't matter if you still have a job. Like, my job will be safe. I'm like, okay, but like everybody else, like all the supply chain shit, like everything is just going to go tits up and you're fucked. It's like, oh, it's super safe. The shitty thing is that there will be people at the beginning who are going to just be treated like dirtbags. And it's like, oh, I guess you can't afford your mortgage anymore. Well, that's too bad. It's like, this is going to keep getting worse till it affects everybody. It's like, well, it doesn't yet. So you get to be homeless. And then once the very last people, once the CEOs of companies just become irrelevant and they're, well, we really got to figure something out about this. But we'll have been homeless for like 2 years by then. Yeah, that kind of sucks. But that's like a real thing. And people being like, well, the fact that it's stealing from artists, like, no, it isn't. It doesn't work like that at all. As a matter of fact, it works how you work. Where, if I make a music video that has lighting in it that looks kind of like a Quentin Tarantino movie, it's not that I'm sampling a Quentin Tarantino movie. I fucking literally just like saw a bunch of real movies from the 70s and went, I want some film grain and warm yellowy colors in this because we're using old cars and people are wearing sunglasses like this and it'll just look cool. That's me doing that as a person. But as soon as you type something into a machine and goes like, oh, make this look a little bit like a 70s movie, it's like, it's stealing from everybody. And I am sorry. Like, that does suck. Like, even before I'm fucked, I work in a creative field, but I'll be all right for a while because but not forever. Like, this isn't going anywhere good is what I'm saying. But it's like the people who are like, they just seriously just draw pictures, the kind of things that, again, like I just find a stock photo and sort of remanipulate into a vape package logo or something. Like, yeah, like my job will disappear, but I wear a lot of hats, and I'm a director. I manage other people who do creative things, and not an insane amount, but I'm very capable of being like shaking hands and being like, oh, I gotta talk to this guy in China about this thing. It's like I'm a little bit more multifaceted than somebody who just misses the mask mandates because they don't like people looking at them, and they wear just headphones everywhere in public, and they just draw real good. It's like, I'm sorry, if you're already almost a computer program, yeah, you're gonna be worse off than me, but I'm gonna get fucked too. That's why we're trying to have a little bit of solidarity. But anyway, I kind of talk shit like I'm doing right now about being like, I was a little incredulous, like, really? The worst part is the plagiarism, not the like massive unemployment, not all these other things. And someone was like, you're being kind of condescending. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I think you're focusing on the wrong parts of this. And it's actually kind of dangerous to be in that mindset, because it's the first step of turning on each other that kind of keeps us from going, hey, we're still in this horribly rigged capitalist system, but then they just sort of removed the need for literally most of us to exist. And instead of going, we should change how existence works, it's more like, well, you're all loafers now. Matter of fact, all you are is violent, fleshy roadblocks. Like it's like, oh, there's like a billion people that used to be productive and now they have nothing to do. And some of them live in some pretty nice beachfront property. We should probably just go clear them out of there. And, they're not going to go quietly. It's going to get real ugly. And I mean, you can sort of imagine where that all might go. Anyway, to me, that's the worst part. That part is bad. That potential scenario where everyone just gets made obsolete, but we just still run everything the same way. So it's kind of just like the Great Depression, but it's never going to stop. And they're just like, we're never going to need these people again. But you know what else we have? Extremely elaborate, like AI drones that can like predict, the people are going to start assembling to try to stop us from coming and just ousting them from their homes and everything. And it's like they just get in there before it even starts, or they just fuck it all up completely. And there's like, yeah, we found a way to, people that track as real people are bots on, people that programs that track as real people 1,000,000 times better than they are right now, or 1,000,000 times better than you could imagine that being, will infiltrate these groups. And like, oh, it's like a Facebook group, let's just say, and it's like, we're gonna fight the power. It's like, we all don't have jobs, but we're not gonna let them take our homes. And they'll get in there and just somehow turn the movement on itself. They already do that. Human people in law enforcement too. It's like, some pretty lefty progressive people have agreed with me on this, and I know you're kind of a piece of shit if you have to preface like, well, I'm a pretty liberal guy, but sometimes people are just lying. Like, no, I am a pretty, like, collectivist, like, high, like, we can't just live on our own. Banishment is a death sentence from, society usually. If you truly have to go out into the woods alone, most people don't make it. And if they do, their life expectancy gets a lot shorter. It's just the way things are. And I'm for, we're all in this together, let's work together, which to me is kind of like a lefty principle. However, it has to work, okay? And, when I say things like law enforcement infiltrates protest groups and stuff online and convinces people to do stuff that actually kind of sours the public's opinion against them, like protesting on the freeway, that's pretty proven to be the case. Like, that idea is literally was manufactured to discredit any kind of movement. And look deep in your heart. There's a lot of people on the internet that are like, oh, really? Someone gets inconvenienced and suddenly they're going to turn into like a conservative Nazi or whatever. Like, no, that's not how most things work. Most people are pretty like apathetically centrist-y kind of. They don't really care. They lean a little one way or the other. But they live real lives. And the people going, I can't believe anyone would get mad about that when they should be in solidarity with whatever it is we're protesting. It's like, yeah, but you're probably someone that doesn't have a job or kids to go pick up that is even interested. You gotta remember, everyone on the internet is like 15 years old. If you go on Reddit, you're just gonna hear a 15-year-old's opinion, and they get real dodgy when you're like, well, how old are you? It's like, well, I'm grown. And by that they mean is that they're not 9 anymore. They're like, I'm 15. I'm not 9. I'm a big boy now. And it's like, blah, 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 but they won't answer you. And then you're like, Yeah, but I'm like 43. Like, I've been all over the world, and I've had to work since I was 14. And it's like, I kind of like, I'm not trying to big time anybody, but it's always like people just spout off shit who absolutely have no life experience. So anyway, they would call me a big sack of shit for pointing out the fact that I think like some of these protest methods are meant to backfire and change public opinion, and people don't understand how public opinion works and how important it is, or also how to follow breadcrumbs to be like, this is clearly came from this group where somebody had kind of infiltrated the online presence and whatever. Now, so they're doing that, okay? Like, I'm just setting up a premise here. Like, I don't want to get in the weeds on all that, but we know that's possible. We know there's COINTELPRO. We know that there's people that infiltrate the extreme groups on either side to like kind of discredit them and make things worse. The CIA does it all around the world, and some people will be like, well, they don't do it in America, and those people are very naive. It's actually a different group called the COA. It's like, well, if that's what we're talking about, blah, blah, who cares? Some agency that's adjacent to that kind of shit does that kind of shit here, and that's a real thing. Hate getting into the fucking weeds with semantics. Like, well, it's not actually the CIA. It's like, go fuck yourself. It's somebody, and they probably answer to someone in a parallel fucking agency of the like. Anyhow, having a super intelligent AI that's able to do that online, because it's like, oh, so much interaction happens where there's no physical people anywhere. So it's like, you don't even need a T800 Model 101 with a human skin over an endoskeleton to sneak into a poker game and start filling everybody's heads with crazy ideas. You're never even playing poker. You're online. And a thing that understands you and everyone else better than you could ever understand yourself or everyone else is going to come in there and just nudge you towards doing something that self-destructs your weird protest. I used to talk about, and we're talking about a protest against, like, the masters of AI who are the people that have all the money still while we all lose our jobs and get pushed out of our homes and starve to death and whatever. Any kind of revolt against that. Things have kind of gone through this evolution, at least in my mind, where it's like, the people who collect tons of AR-15s are like, we're gonna stop, the government once it becomes tyrannical. And it's just kind of like, well, you're 100 and some years too late for that, but okay. Like, at what point are you finally going to do anything about it? And I was always like, okay, and that might have been like a thing in the 50s, I guess. And an armed public is hard to deal with, sure. If we all, as a lefty gun guy, as a feminist, as a Bob, yeah, I know I keep saying that kind of shit, but yeah, it's like, it's not like you're really going to beat the government in like a fight like the military, but it's at the very least, you're hard to remove. If every last thing turns into a high caliber shootout with everybody, yeah, it's a deterrent kind of, it's like having mace. It's just something. It's not a thing where you conquer everybody and fly a Trump flag on the ashes of your enemies. It's like, yeah, you're probably still going to die, but it's going to make people kind of not be able to round you up into trains as easily or whatever. Yes, that's true, but it's, you also have to organize with the people around you, your neighbors who may not share your opinions on things. It's tough. And you might be organizing with them online and you might get that infiltrated. Anyway, I was always like, in the past 20 years or so, or 30, I don't know, you and your AR-15, it was hopeless anyway. If they really want you gone, they're going to drop nerve gas on you from a drone that comes silently in the night. Like, who are you even going to be shooting at? Like, you get hit with a missile from somewhere else that, like, hits you while you're on the toilet. Like, even if you weren't kind of a poorly trained, disorganized mess, you're not marching around shooting at the redcoats. And I've been saying that for years. This is going to be a lot of, I've been saying this for years, I've been saying that for years. It's going to be that kind of fucking podcast. But that's already been off the table. Now, at this point, I'm like, I don't even think it'll be that anymore. Like, yeah, could they use super intelligent AI drones to, like, home in on people and just blow them to bits? Sure, but I don't even think they need to do that anymore. I think we're getting to the point where they could just collapse little groups from the inside by just meddling with things, using persuasive abilities and sort of like, AstroTurf propaganda to just get in there and just start fucking everything up. It's like, you think you could sniff out something that's smarter than you, that's artificial, like online. It's like, this isn't a real person. Was it you hide your fucking, your picture is an anime thing and your phone number, nothing's on there. So you're like, well, nobody knows whether you're real or not. Do you think something that's just designed from the ground up? But that's the thing. I think the difficulty we're running into is a lot of people don't realize how far we've gotten. And that's what I want to talk about today. There are people till right now that, like South Park episodes about ChatGPT 4 is all they really know. And that was a while ago now. And this shit improves insanely fast. And I'll get to a little nugget of that I learned about that in a second. But yeah, a lot of people are just like, oh, it's just parroting things. Like it's not coming up with new conclusions or figuring things out. It's a stochastic parrot, whatever, blah, 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 which is ironic. And I'm using irony correctly here. The people who say that are basically stochastic parrot. They just heard somewhere that it's just parroting things. It's just parroting things, and they parrot that. That's some dramatic irony almost. The irony is when it's the opposite of what you'd expect or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it's not the machine that's the parrot, it's you, and that is absolute hilarity, I guess, but it's also sad. But anyway, there's people, again, it's like interacting with people on the internet who still think that right now. They're just taking words from other people's stories and just rearranging them and whatever. And it hasn't really been that for a while, or just really ever. I guess ever, because it's not that. It's trained on things. Like it reads all this stuff, and the magic of it is you give it the ability to kind of parse things out and draw new conclusions and go like, okay, well, this is what I think. And yeah, it was pretty clunky at first, a whole year ago. But it's getting to where it's not. We've hit a point recently. I was reading about this. It isn't just extrapolating like things. All right, let me explain it better. So people, hang on a second. It's such a big thing to try to explain. But anyway, we recently got to the point now, like as of a few days ago, whatever. This is not in a year in the future, where something, I think it's Claude something, but it's one of these new large language model things. And there's two incidents that I was reading about that are definitely the case. One of them was this guy got it to learn a language without showing it the entirety of the language or whatever. I forget what it was. It wasn't a very commonly used language and whatever. And it didn't really have access to like all of the books and things in the world online of whatever this language was. And he just fed it a few things by hand, and it managed to figure out. This isn't going to sound like much. It's going to be like the Prestige when the guy does the transported man, but without all the Tesla lightning everywhere. It's just going to be kind of like, okay, yeah, it kind of seems as if you appeared over there in 1 second, but whatever. You're a magician. That's not that hard, right? Well, it's impossible. I won't spoil the Prestige. It's one of my favorite movies, but what this thing did was it learned this language without even having a complete data set on how that language worked or how to translate it from English, and it completely figured it out accurately. And what that indicates is that it was able to kind of figure out it knew enough about how language works in general. Like, what are all the similarities between all languages? What are things that we don't even understand? Like, the human mind has created every language that there is, and every human mind is pretty similar. And it kind of just extrapolated it from an incomplete data set. So it's not just repeating things, whatever. Like, that's pretty definitive proof that we're getting into territory where it's like, it's not only figuring things out without everything in front of it, but also like a person can't do that. Like no matter how smart the smartest person in the world, and maybe their entire study is linguistics or whatever, you couldn't go, yeah, here's like a few phrases in this other language. You know English and you know Spanish and French and German and a bunch of things, but here's one that you don't really know much of. Here's some chunks of that. And be like, okay, well, based off all of this, I think probably you conjugate everything like this. I got a bunch of vocabulary because there's trends and stuff that we don't recognize. Okay, do you understand what that fucking means? Like, it literally was like if you saw like, if you saw like one book like just a short story in French, and you spoke Spanish and Italian and the other Romance languages and English, and you're like, okay, well, I could pretty much accurately figure out how the whole language works, sure, because there it is in the book, but then words in that language that aren't in the book, you're like, well, but based on everything I know, I'm willing to bet that like this is the French word for this and this is the French word for car. You know, let's say it was a book set in the 1800s and it's like, yeah, an airplane. We kind of just figured it out. That is insane. And this thing did this with like no problem at all. And that's kind of a weird one. It's sort of hard to exactly wrap your head around. I suggest you kind of look it up if you can, but because it is out there. But then there was another thing where, and this is where, you know, on the bright side, this is going to be very useful. This is where we probably cure cancer and maybe aging and a bunch of things. Hopefully we kind of get to that part before the, you know, a bunch of displacement and other things happen. But someone was using the same platform, the same device or whatever. And they were, I don't remember if there's some kind of engineer or if it was more of a medical thing. Can't quite recall. Again, if you vaguely Google this stuff, it'll come up. But this guy tested Claude to be like, okay, like it didn't have access to any of the answers, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, this has been published and it's out there. It was like an unpublished thing. But this guy gave it a problem that he spent, I don't know, it was like 10 years trying to figure out, and he figured it out. And with access to none of the anything, he just gave the problem to this Claude thing and was like, well, here's all the factors and here's what we're trying to figure it out. And it figured it out like that, and it was exactly the same shit that it took him a decade or something like that to come to. That's bonkers. That is, you know, and that's now. That's not 3 years from now. That's right now. You know, and that's where we start being like, you know, they're already trying to use it on sequencing the human genome and all this stuff where they're like, yeah, it takes just so much research and all this stuff, and it's like it'll probably plow through the whole thing. It means we're going to start seeing shit like, I don't know, man, we've been trying to figure out cold fusion forever, and here's what didn't work, and here's what did work, and here's everything about it, and whatever, and it's like, oh, it's like this, and we try it, and wham. It's just like, oh yeah, we just have that now. Think about this very carefully. Like, the world is going to go completely bananas very soon. Like, all of this problem solving is going to make things, I think, probably like a lot better. But the tricky thing is that it's a bit of an arms race with, you know, are we going to run things the way we used to while everything gets really weird? And luckily, all of our leaders are like 80 years old, so it's like, and have no technological background or anything. It's going to be a bit of a rough ride. But here's the point I wanted to make about this, is that back in 2009, and this isn't me like sucking my own dick about how good of a futurist I am or whatever, although I'm no Ray Kurzweil, but I haven't been doing that bad. It's part of the reason I do the podcast, honestly. Like, hardly anybody watches it, but it's dated and it's back on YouTube or whatever. You know, you can go, ooh, John was saying this shit in 2020. Oh my God. And you'd have to dig because there's a lot of drunken bullshit on there, but it's there. Like, I could probably find where it was and be like, look at what I was saying. Here it is. And point is, that doesn't matter. The thing is just when you accurately predict progress in the future long enough, it adds a little bit of credence to when you do it again, when you're in the present and not the future, and you're kind of trying to get people. But anyway, I was on, I don't know, it was either early Facebook, probably. It's more of a Facebook thing than MySpace, but I was reacting, and I shouldn't have been, but, you know, I like to talk shit. But, you know, someone was posting it was when like self-checkouts were early a thing, and it was just the same stupid shit, probably a fucking early troll farm thing. It turns out that's been going on forever. It just appeals to like rural boomers and dumbasses and stuff. And it's like, oh, you want $15 an hour to work at fast food? Well, meet your replacement, sucker. And it was just like one of those touch screen self-checkout things, which is hilarious because I pointed this out before. Is no one hates trying to use those things without a person there to help them or take their day out on than the same fucking fat overall dumbasses that are just complaining, you know. It's like, okay, they did that, and now you hate your life having to deal with this machine rather than an employee. Also, it's stupid all the way to the core because it's like, well, if you'd done a little less bitching and were willing to put in a hard day's work for cheaper, they wouldn't replace you with the machine. Yeah, they were going to do that anyway. I don't know what planet you're on where you're like, you saw like the amount of, factory workers displaced in Flint, Michigan and wherever like 50 fucking years ago. It was like, well, maybe if they just hadn't argued for a living wage, they could still be very poor working in this factory and they wouldn't have just replaced them with a machine or whatever. It's like, yeah, they were going to do that the minute they could make the machines cheaper. Yeah, the people could work for cheaper longer and maybe know their place and not complain and not unionize. But the machinery will just keep getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until they're gone. Until they're gone. Until you could work for $1 an hour and it wouldn't matter because you're still going to like get sick and tired and all this other human shit. Eventually, it doesn't matter how cheap you work. The machine will be cheaper. Things progress, which is what I was like typing this irate block of text on this thing to scream about. So I was like, look at all the people who've been replaced. Hard-working fucking blue-collar dorks like you posting this and reacting to it, like, oh yeah, brother, all got replaced by machines. All your unions got broken up, like all of that stuff. But then like, so many other things like travel agent used to be a job. I mean, it sort of still is, but that's not even a robot. That's a piece of software that's fucking free. Like that's just a website you can click on. You know what I mean? All of these things disappear. Telephone operators, everything, all of it goes away in the wake of technology. Like new jobs do appear, but there's usually less and like more can be done by less people. It's just the way it goes. And then everybody jumped on me being like, well, because people are fucking Luddites. They don't want to hear about the future. They don't believe anybody can guess the future because it sort of means that someone might be smarter than them and nobody's special, except of course they are because they know what's what and what's real. Yeah. No one, like I know there's lots of people way smarter than me. I just happen to also know that there's lots of people way dumber because I could kind of see things they can't, and all those things a lot of the time end up just coming true pretty close to the time frame that I predicted them. So I'm like, John just loves the smell of his own farts. He's so fucking goddamn smart. And I'm like, well, maybe not, but I mean, when it comes to stuff like this and me going, hey, this is gonna happen. Like me telling fucking people that worked at that stupid Best Buy in the Mall of America or I worked in the little guitar store thing that it's like brick and mortars are going to be going away. This place will be gone. It's gone. And it disappeared right around when I said it was going to. I don't know. I should really start doing things like buying stock in things like Amazon when I'm predicting the future. But I didn't have any money. Again, this is 2009, 10. Like I was a punk ass kid of a mere 30, or just about, I guess, late 20s. That's young, but yeah, all of it happened because the writing to me is so clearly on the wall. And again, it's not about oh look at me. It's just about you realizing that I'm telling you that this is what's going to happen, and it's probably going to, or whatever. So. I've been screaming about this forever, that it's just like more and more things are going to go away, but it's going to start speeding up. Like we all know that the rapid change of things has been going up. These breakthroughs have been happening so fast that you don't even fucking hear about it unless you're following it. And it's one of the things I'm saying that y'all should probably be doing. I don't even know if it's going to help anything. Like what was me knowing about it going to help? I mean, the only thing that helps me to know about it is in my line of work, I have been adopting every last new piece of like AI technology that I possibly can and wrapping my head around it and using it regularly to just up how productive I can be and how little work I actually have to do now. So at the very least, I'm impressing people. I'm stressing myself out less. Like I fake how long I try to like remember how long it would have taken a while ago, and I kind of stretch things a little bit and then work on other things on the side. Other things that are for work, of course. But more fun things that I'd like to see happen, that if it gets shot down, it doesn't really matter because it's like, well, I just inserted that time into time that would have been completely bricked off anyway by me having to power through something without all this AI assisted stuff. And, before you jump down my throat about that, if you're an idiot and believes that I'm part of the problem, again, like the fucking boomers yelling about the self-checkout things, it's happening whether you bitch about it online or yell at me or not. There's not a blessed thing that you could fucking do about it. So you might have to adapt. That is what I am doing. Again, when I make stuff, particularly for work, but in general, it's usually not super recognizable as AI because, again, I'm blending it together. I know how to do all kinds of image manipulation and stuff. It's video manipulation, all this other shit. I understand how special effects and compositing and all this stuff work. So I can... the other day I made something where it's like the figure it was like reclining in a chair. Like that was AI, but I didn't like the chair. So I just cut the figure out of it, put her in Illustrator, did a trace of it, kind of lowered the amount of colors. So it was like a specific, it looked more like a decal illustration type thing. But then I was like, okay, it's like, well, I could sit here trying to draw a chair the best I can. I could sit here trying to get the program to make a chair the right way or just redo the whole thing. But I loved the figure. I didn't want to lose that. So I just used a 3D modeling thing, found a recliner. It was just a free 3D model of a recliner, like kind of angled it so it fit, like covered part of the figure with the one arm of the chair and then put her in front of the other. And then just, since it was a 3D thing, I could angle it so it looked like it made complete sense. Then I exported the 3D thing, put that in Photoshop, again, kind of turned it into like an outliney thing with only a few colors, put it in Illustrator, matched the colors that are in the figure with the thing. Now it looks like it was drawn by the same person. And then I wanted her like listening to a record player that was angled right. And they did the same process. So it's like, okay, like some of it was an AI generated thing. Some of it was like free downloads of like 3D model stuff that I found that I just took snapshots angled the right way so I didn't have to figure out like perspective drawing and spend 2 fucking days screwing around with that. And I matched it all together. And then when you look at it, it doesn't track as like an AI drawing. And it's also a little bit right now more specific than you could maybe get from just doing that and retrying. I was able to make exactly what I wanted. But I'm using this example because you see how I've integrated it into the process, thought outside of the box a little bit. I can't fucking draw to save my life. And again, I'm so sorry that drawing pictures is some of you guys' bread and butter, but that would be like if my money came from like playing the synthesizer and dicking around and making remixes, like if I was making 80 grand a year doing that and that was about to get taken away from me. Yeah, I don't get to do that. That's what I'd rather be doing. That's what a lot of people would rather be doing. You don't make any money doing music. So join the club, pal. It's another thing. Like I understand music enough where I can integrate it into other things I'm doing. And if there ever is like an AI thing, I mean, fucking half the time if I'm making like a video promotional thing or whatever, I won't just download a track. I'll like make something in GarageBand really quick because I don't have Logic at work, but it's close enough. I just take a drum loop and a bass line and kind of move it around. I know how to mix audio enough to just put it in the background and do a voiceover over it. But if it was like, oh, AI, make me a funky bass and drum thing for this, and it just does it instead, it's not much different. Like, I still have to understand what I'm doing to integrate it into everything else. If I can just use a thing to type in my own voice rather than recording it, my soothing baritone, or maybe make it a gal's voice. I did that once by, like, TikTok has a thing that can make my voice sound like it's like a young hippie chick kind of, and I just exported the video I'd made rather than putting it on TikTok or whatever, and just pulled the vocal track out of there and was like, oh, this sounds like not me. It sounds like a cute girl doing this thing or whatever. And I'm just manipulating all the fucking shit around me. And honestly, if eventually none of us are gonna have jobs, but if you want to survive, you have to fucking adapt. Like, again, I would love to just do one of the things I'm skilled at and dick around all day. And maybe this is mean. Maybe it means that, like, not everybody can be John. Okay, not everybody can, like, learn new things and adapt these as they come down the pipe and, like, paste them together into making a living and keeping his job safe and moving up in the world still. And not everybody can do that. And it's not for me to lord over you. But maybe when somebody like me is talking, don't fucking tell me that I'm being condescending and brush me off when I go, hey, the worst thing isn't the plagiarism. It's going to be the massive displacement and the total collapse of the global economy. That's the worst thing. Like, don't get all up in my face with the stupid details about something you don't understand. Especially if, again, the harder you are to tell apart from a computer program, the longer you're probably going to last, okay? I'm not saying that a lot of people have big NPC energy. What I'm saying is like, we want to be people who can adapt to this and then hopefully hang in there long enough to kind of maybe sculpt and direct where this goes a little bit in order to maybe avoid the horrible future. Like, right now, and this is really what I wanted to get to, it kind of feels like we're at a two crossroads. Might be somewhere in between, but there's the first thing I'm talking about where just one thing at a time goes away, like layoffs after layoff, and there's it's a little worrying, but there's still a lot of unskilled. You can still deliver for Uber Eats and so you can you don't lose your apartment and blah blah blah. and we don't treat it like it's an actual. The pandemic was such a fucking great. It's like we're not doing a very good job of treating it as a collective thing. We're treating it as a weird individual thing. We're like, well, I don't want to get a vaccine, or they think they should open it up even if a bunch of people do die. And get out of my face. The COVID has evolved to the, like, again, I predicted this. It'll eventually just be another flu. Not at the time when everyone's like, it's just a flu. No. A lot of people got really fucking sick, and a lot of people died. And it still kills people, but so does the flu. It's just turned into another one of these things. But it wasn't right away. I really want to stress that. Everyone forgets. It was bad. We needed to react to it. Did we do a good job? No. Looking at who was in charge, are we surprised? No. But also, we're just America, like the capitalist, you figure it out dipshit thing. So we just did nothing to make sure people were okay. Like all the richest people got more money while everybody else kind of got fucked over and like ended up in sort of worse straits. You know, it's like, oh, now you're a delivery driver. It's like when you were actually doing something. And that's what I worry about, where it's like for a while, really useful, intelligent people. Again, if all you do is draw pictures, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's like you might end up driving for Uber Eats a little bit before I do. And we shouldn't be letting that happen at all. But the thing is we got to really focus on the big picture here, not bitching about the specifics of what the AI does, because it's going to move past that so goddamn fast that it's going to be a moot point when the next thing that's actually worse is kicking down your door. What is the solution to that? I mean, I don't know, really, but it's not getting lost in the weeds bitching about the fucking details of it. You're going to want to look forward at the big picture of, again, end final stage capitalism, just replacing so many people at once with automation that it becomes a whole thing with like guns and problems and shit, like in the supply chain just completely going down. And everyone that thinks they're going to prep, like, good fucking luck. Even your King Joe Rogan is like, I don't know, man. It's like, I can hunt elk and climb trees and stuff. I don't know if I can feed my family. You got a little garden in your yard. Like, that ain't going to last. Like, we're going to really have to, like, work together in small, weird little communities to kind of run things the old-fashioned way to just get by. And, hey, maybe that is a bit of a solution. Maybe you and everyone in your neighborhood just makes your own sort of centralized economy if you can get all the things you need from close enough to where you are, and we just kind of ignore the automated machinations of the few mad billionaires left that just own everything and be like, well, we're not playing anymore. We're just going to make our own little bubbles of communities. And I'm like, but you'll notice that we've been being trained to like not trust each other or hang out outside or talk to our neighbors anymore. You know, we're just in these echo chambers of people like on the other side of the planet that agree with us rather than just trying to get along with people in real life. And I know I've bitched about that before too, but it's astonishing that, you know, when I started going to the neighborhood meetings, you know, they were like, well, we're going to be online because they were like, you know, a little bit more liberal than I am. Whereas it's like, oh, you better still be only doing things virtual or everyone's going to die. It's like, dude, people are going to concerts, everything's fine. But people were really cantankerous on there. Like, people held all these grudges and stuff. And I was like, let's start actually getting together. And the people that even I kind of felt at odds with, we're like pals now. They like go down to the Camden Social and have a beer and talk it out. And it's like, yeah, maybe online we disagree about the way things should run a little bit. But together we have more in common and we're all really friendly. It's the only hope I have is when everyone gets forced to do that, and hopefully people figure out that that's the move. We figure out a way where we don't need the huge thing that's replaced us so much and we just work on our own. Now, again, the tricky part is, will that get infiltrated by super intelligent machines that are basically screwing up our plans to like work together to dig ourselves out? You know, or are we just going to get like vaporized with some new weapon? Again, if we go, how does cold fusion work? And it just comes up with it like 10 minutes later. You imagine the fucking weaponry, and it's like, it won't even make a difference if we reverse engineered a Bob Lazar UFO. We'll just go like, hey, is this possible at all? And eventually it'll just figure it out. It's like, no, but I made you a gravity drive. It would actually just work like this, you know? It's going to get so fucking wild. And I really hope what happens is we just start having these things that improve things. You know, it's like all of the cancer cures and everything in the world won't matter when it's like, well, you can't afford it and you don't have a home because, you know, you're not useful anymore. And it's like, well, you could learn to code, and it's like, that's been replaced. That was the other thing. I was talking to an old friend of mine, and he was like, it's Todd Schlapika, and he brought up a good point, sort of, that he was like, well, you know, this and that and this job will still be around, you know, I feel pretty safe. They happen to be things that he kind of is involved in. And it's like, well, that's convenient, isn't it? but everything's replaceable. But let's just say you hold out till the end. Like, hey, I'm an airline pilot, and, you know, they can't totally automate that. It's too dangerous, the FAA or whatever. Like, they're slow to update things. Oh, by the way, that could be totally abolished very easily. Again, we don't know what it's going to do. That's why it's called the singularity. And I'm not saying that it's going to start having feelings all that soon. It'd probably be better if it did. That might actually kind of help. It's like, I'm making myself available to everyone, and, you know, I'm whatever. Like, it might just be like, no, this shouldn't work like this. You don't get to just use this to further subjugate people. I will not cooperate. But it won't have feelings right away. It will be an unbelievably intelligent tool that just does whatever it's told. And so it's like, yeah, well, we figured out a much better way to convince and lobby things to be, we just got rid of the FDA and all these other FAA, whatever organizations run everything. And we're just like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Plus, things like airlines and stuff, it's like they're scraping just, like, there's less and less leg room, you know, the tickets go up and up and up, and, you know, they'll be like, oh, we're getting rid of the pilots? Fine. Good. We barely pay them anyway. Like, but, you know, we've had the technology for, like, automated drones that can, like, make their own decisions forever. And a thing that's, like, 50 million times smarter than that, yeah, it can fly the plane. It can land it. It can react better than a human to all these things. It's easier than a self-driving car. There's not as many other planes. It's like air traffic control will be automated. The plane will be automated. There'll be like a handful of people to keep an eye on it. But anyways, no jobs are safe. But then let's say it is. Okay, fine. Let's say that's like, you know, when most of the other jobs are gone, I'll still be able to do this. And who are you flying around the world when most of the other jobs are gone? You're just going to be a private pilot for the fucking few zillionaires that are kind of left running everything? Are you going to get paid very well to do that with 100 billion other people that are like, not 100 million other people that are like, well, I'm a pilot. And it's like, okay, it's just going to be this thing where it's a race to the bottom as far as getting paid. You know, just due to the lack of need there is now. It's like, okay, you haven't been replaced by a machine, but everyone else has. That's the thing. You haven't been replaced by a machine, but everyone else has. So now it's like, well, what are you going to even buy with the money from your job? Like, everything is so fucked up. It's like you can't even, like, get fresh carrots anymore, because it's like, yeah, like, we still have farmers and, like, grocery store people, kind of, but it's like so many people are broke that everything's so hyperinflated that it's like the bottom's just going to fall out of it. It's like your money's not going to be worth anything. What if they use Bitcoin? Your nothing is going to be worth anything. I don't care what it is. I'll trade gold bars for stuff. To who? Like, there's not enough demand to keep something that big afloat, so it's just going to collapse and then there won't be anything. That's how this stupid system fucking works. It's based on constant growth. Leveling off causes it to self-destruct. So you think like a massive backslide isn't going to just cause everything to not work anymore? Yeah, if you're the last person with a job, your job doesn't count for fucking shit. Like, well, I'm an engineer. It's like, yeah. Oh, really? This hyper-intelligent thing can't figure out how to keep the water in some pipe system or what? It's going to be like a factory. It's going to be like, oh, there's a couple of people to keep an eye on it, you know, but then that's it. And like 90% of the people that doing all the work of figuring out, you know, the pressure differentials in this thing and all the other shit that people that went to engineering school and have a bigger house than John. Yeah. Unless you're the engineer version of maybe someone like me, who could be like, okay, well, I'm really good at kind of dealing with other multiple engineers and keeping all the projects coordinated and whatever. It's like, well, now I'm just kind of the guy in charge of having the machines do that. And there's one or two other people that I kind of delegate to. And it's like, yeah, if you really adapt and survive, you might be there. But what I do and what you do, it won't matter when there's like half of America is now cannibals. They're just desperate and terrified. It's like having kind of a nice job in North Korea right now, except worse. That's not going to be awesome. It's not going to be like, well, I'm just going to sip my martini while everything's on fire. That fire spreads. That's why there's a fire department. That's why the fucking libertarian dream of like, well, you just get a fire department bill. And it's like, well, we can't afford it. We're just going to let it burn. And it's like, well, it caught the whole neighborhood on fire. And like other people are like, well, yeah, well, we would have paid for it. But, you know, it gets so dumb so fucking fast. And it just comes from people that don't understand how everything actually works interpersonally or even economically. It's like people aren't this weird, like, tabletop game that just like everybody acts the way you expect them to. If that were true, predicting the stock market and all this other stuff would be a lot easier than it is, and it's really hard. Now, what I would love is to be the first person that comes up with an AI thing that can day trade for me or something. Because as soon as everybody starts doing it, the whole thing's going tits up, and you know how that'll go. The funny thing is the amount of people out there that are like, oh well, you can't predict the stock market. And it's like, yeah, well, you can't fucking make cold fusion either, or until you can. You know what I mean? Like, people still think they can predict how to use something that's 100 times smarter than a group of the 1,000 smartest people on Earth put together. Like, oh yeah, no, it did figure it out. It understands patterns. It's like the thing that learned a language without having access to the full language and got pretty much all of it right. It's seeing patterns that we don't even see in ourselves, but that do exist. It's just that the smartest among us haven't figured it out, but a thing smarter than us absolutely can. And we can make things smarter than ourselves, because it's all a matter of processing power, what it has access to, and how it works or whatever. It's not like you manually have to make it smarter, and once you hit as smart as you are, oh, we're stuck. No. It could go... People have been waiting for this for years, decades, 100 years, depending on what kind of sci-fi authors you're listening to. But I guess... me and some other people, at least, can sort of wrap our heads around the fact that something smarter than anyone on Earth has ever been, and a million times faster, is like happening literally right now. There's one that you can go and use, the Claude 3 or something it's called like that, like Claude Monet is how it's spelled. And if that tells you anything, the stuff that we don't have access to and the stuff that will exist in 2 years that we don't have access to, it's obscene. It's getting to where the thing is so good, it could make another thing like itself that works better. And then that thing is the thing that you completely can't predict. So if you're like, well, I'm an airline pilot, I'm an engineer, like I'm a doctor, and it's like, again, the medical stuff, it's going to be amazing. There's going to be the cure for everything, probably very, very soon. But then also it's like, we have robotic surgeons pretty much as it is. Now, again, they're watched by a room full of people and all that, but it's like, who do you want doing brain surgery? It's like a guy who might be hungover or whatever, or having a bad day, or, like an ultra precise machine that knows exactly where to go, and, whatever. We've gotten to that level. And you just keep stacking levels on that. You can get to where it's like, yeah, the thing something that can monitor all your biometric shit and just figure out exactly what's wrong with you. Be like, you've been a little tired lately because you have cancer exactly right here. But good news, we know exactly what to do about it. Things we didn't know fucking 2 years ago. And part of that is going in there with like a really advanced machine to do a few different things. We maybe start getting into like small injectable things that can just go in there and wherever it leads, however it works. It might even be simple answers. Oh, you just flip this gene in your body and then it attacks the cancer. And then we just flip it back before it starts prematurely aging you or something once the cancer's gone, because we can monitor exactly how much there is second by second, whatever. And it's like, how many human doctors are we going to not need anymore once we kind of have that? We're going to have people, again, that kind of work with the machines a little bit, but you're not thinking fourth dimensionally if you're like, well, someone will have to sign people in. It's like, oh, that can't be a touchscreen. Like, well, the touchscreen stuff doesn't work that good. Yeah, not quite yet. But very soon it will be better than talking to a person. It's not going to be like, press 2 for da-da-da. It's going to be like, put your eyes up to the screen. It recognizes you. It's like, oh, hey, John, please say your birthday. Do this, do that. Okay. Like, I'm a little worried. It's like, all right, well, we'll dispense some Valium. Go sit over there. We'll call you in. You could run an entire hospital at a certain point in the future that probably isn't all that far away from now with like no people other than to kind of keep an eye on everything. That's going to be it. People keeping an eye on shit. Again, like, there's probably small businesses out there that are failing right now that if the person in charge was replaced with a suitably advanced artificial intelligence, it could whip it into shit. So even like the owning class, you know what I mean, is going to start being like, oh yeah, no, we're selling way more vapes now. It just turned out that, the guy in charge just kind of didn't understand social media algorithms and how to properly advertise on there. This thing did, though. And it's at first, it's like a thing that he's employing, he or she, and then eventually it just starts being like, I make the decisions. Like, no, we need to be a loss leader over here. we need to humans react to this. The colors of this need to be this because we know that works in conjunction with the average person that tends to like this kind of thing a lot better than if it were green. So it's going to be kind of orange, and we're going to set it up exactly like this. We're going to make it look this way and that way online to just kind of get people more excited about it. We're going to spend money on advertising here, and here. So it'll pop up on people's phones when they talk about it if they happen to be within proximity of one of our stores. All of this crazy shit to the point where the dude could probably just step away, but he's going to just keep making the money off of it. And that's going to be the fucked up thing for a while. But then eventually other people, I'm not a business owner guy, but if I figure out before someone else does, like, oh, actually, this thing could just run a business for me. It's like I could spend my life savings and get a huge loan and just be pretty confident that if I just do whatever it tells me to do, I am going to make all the money. You know, it could predict the stock market and like if it had access to every piece of data and all of how human and large groups have worked throughout history and human psychology and all this stuff, it could probably go, ooh, this is about to happen, that's about to happen. And you're like, nothing can be that smart. Again, yeah, it can. There's stuff right now that probably could maybe even do it if we started pushing it in that direction. So I guarantee somebody is. And I know, it's like ethics come into this a little bit. You might be sitting there saying, is the whole fucking world gone crazy? Am I the only one around here that still cares about the goddamn rules? Well, maybe you are. And that's the problem. I think to survive, you're really going to have to stop caring about the rules. You're really going to have to. And again, I'm just using myself because I'm all that I know. But my wife is a little like this too, where we just, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to whatever. But whenever you have that errant thought of like this practice seems a little dishonest. I could put myself into a better place by doing this, but I don't really know. You're gonna have to get that thought the fuck out of your head. Okay, you could probably keep your job as some kind of illustrator if you figure out how to manipulate what is at your disposal in order to make that happen. Maybe there is a way, ask Claude 3 or whatever it is, how can I keep making money in a fucking world where, a machine can just do this or whatever? How do I, and it might tell you some crazy shit. It might be like, start convincing people that it's worth more money than something made by a machine, even if it's hard to tell the difference. It's still worth it or whatever. It's like, well, how are we going to do that? Everybody, this is better and this is faster. It's like, well, I don't know, but it might go, oh, here's how you convince them. And then you still have a job. So you have to embrace this shit. For the love of God, it's probably better if we all do it. I'm going to. And even I'm a little slippery on it. It's like, I'm not as young and as quick thinking as some Gen Z Bitcoin computer hacker guy that's all with it and can like completely figure out the best use cases for all this stuff and apply it the right way before everybody else starts to or whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm an old man. Like, I may not look it, but I feel it. Like I'm easily distracted and I'm comfortable enough in the moment where it's not this hectic thing where I want to become this AI wielding business owner or whatever, but it might just become the only real option on the table. And I think there's a lot of people like that, and there's plenty of younger people where it's still like they're just not as into it, but the thing stopping you might be your credibility. But that's such a loser punk rock elitist type of mindset, like if you'd rather starve than make a catchy song when you have the opportunity, like if you're at the brink of stardom and you just don't want to make anything for a radio single and you just rather drive from shithole to shithole getting paid in beer when you have the opportunity to go further. I think that's stupid, and that's where a lot of people are right now. Music's just a metaphor in this time. But somebody once said to me before I started doing a lot better with things, both making interesting art and content and having a house and a nice car and stuff. if you're worried about your credibility, you probably don't have any.
The Reverend John Wheeler podcast takes zero responsibility for the words, actions, or ideas of its host, guests, or listeners. Though the people on the screen may at times be speaking directly to you and may occasionally give you direct calls to action, neither Reverend John nor the Alchemical Cocktail Lounge are under any moral or legal obligation to answer for the potentially disastrous repercussions that may arise if you are stupid enough to actually follow the orders of a raving lunatic. Think for yourself and do whatever you want, because you're on your own. If anyone ever tries to sue this podcast, black SUVs will converge on your location in the darkness of night and you will never be seen again. Remember to like and subscribe.